In the quiet streets of Wilmington, North Carolina, where childhood dreams once soared on cracked basketball courts, Michael Jordan's life changed forever the evening he spotted his long-lost childhood friend, Ryan Harris, digging through a dumpster behind Joey's Pizza. What began as a simple act of kindness, reaching out to the broken man who had once believed in him more than anyone, soon turned into a profound journey of pain, dark secrets, forgiveness, and redemption that would test the limits of friendship and force both men to confront the past in order to heal their wounded hearts. Michael Jordan drove slowly through the familiar streets of Wilmington, North Carolina. The golden sunset painted the sky as memories flooded back, the cracked asphalt courts, the laughter of children, and the dreams he once shared with his best friend. Even after all the championships and the fame, this old neighborhood still pulled at his heart. He passed the corner store where they used to buy penny candy after practice and the rusty basketball hoop that had seen countless hours of them chasing their NBA dreams together. Something in the air tonight felt different, like an old pull he couldn't ignore. Behind Joey's Pizza, a ragged figure was digging through the dumpster. The man moved with a familiar shift of weight, like a player getting ready to drive past a defender. Michael's heart suddenly tightened. He pulled his car over and stared harder. No way. It couldn't be. "Ryan?" he whispered. The man froze, then bolted like he'd seen a ghost. Michael jumped out of his luxury car, leaving the door wide open, and ran after him. "Ryan Harris, stop! It's me, Michael!" he shouted, his voice full of urgency. Ryan darted into the narrow alley, knocking over trash cans in a desperate attempt to slow Michael down. But exhaustion quickly caught up with him. His legs gave out and he collapsed onto the dirty sidewalk, breathing hard and shaking. Michael reached him in seconds and dropped to his knees beside his old friend. Up close, the sight broke his heart. Ryan's face was gaunt and lined with years of hardship. His clothes were torn and dirty, and he smelled of the streets. But those eyes, those were still the same eyes that used to light up when they talked about playing in the NBA together. Michael gently placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder, afraid he might disappear again. "After all these years, it's really you," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Don't run from me, man. Not again." Ryan looked up, shame and pain written all over his face. Tears welled in his eyes as he tried to pull away. "You shouldn't see me like this, Michael," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm nothing now. Just let me go, please." Michael shook his head, refusing to let go. Memories flashed through his mind, the two of them as kids, sharing one milkshake with two straws, promising they'd make it to the big leagues together. "You were the one who taught me how to play," Michael said, his throat tight. "You believed in me when no one else did. I'm not walking away from you now." Ryan's shoulders trembled as he sat there on the cold ground. Michael helped him sit up slowly and spoke with quiet determination. "Come on, let's get something to eat. Wilson's Diner is still open. Just one meal. You look like you haven't eaten properly in days." Ryan immediately shook his head. "No, I can't. People will see me with you. I don't want your pity, Michael. Just leave me here." He tried to stand up, but his legs were too weak. Michael stayed right there, holding his arm gently but firmly. "This isn't pity. You're my brother. Remember all those nights we talked about our future? I'm not letting you disappear again. One meal, Ryan. That's it. If you want to walk away after that, I won't stop you. But don't make me chase you through these streets again. Please." "For me." The two men locked eyes for a long moment. Ryan's face showed years of pain and pride fighting inside him. Finally, after a heavy silence, he let out a tired sigh and gave a small nod. "Just one meal," he muttered. "Then I'm gone." Michael helped him to his feet, supporting most of his weight as they walked slowly toward the car. His heart felt heavy but hopeful. As they drove the short distance to the diner, neither said much, but the silence was full of everything they hadn't said in 30 years. At Wilson's Diner, they sat in their old booth near the back. The familiar red vinyl seats creaked under them, just like they did when they were kids. Ryan looked thin and broken, his eyes constantly darting toward the exit like he was ready to run at any second. The warm lights inside felt too bright for him, and he kept his shoulders hunched, trying to make himself smaller. Michael could see how uncomfortable his old friend was, but he wasn't about to let him slip away. Michael slid the menu across the table. "Order anything you want, man. Remember how we used to dream big here after practice? We talk about playing in the NBA like it was already ours." Ryan's voice came out rough and tired. "You shouldn't have to see me like this, Michael. I'm not the kid who taught you those moves anymore. I'm just a mess." Michael smiled sadly and shook his head. "You were more than a teacher to me. You were my brother. One meal. That's all I'm asking, for old time's sake." Ryan hesitated for a long moment, his hands shaking slightly as he held the menu. Finally, he gave a small nod. They ordered simple food, burgers for Michael and a bowl of soup for Ryan. When the chocolate shake arrived with 2 striped straws, just like they used to share as kids, something shifted. Ryan stared at it for a while before taking a sip. For a brief moment, his eyes softened and the hardness in his face eased a little. "You still remember how we used to fight over who got the last sip?" Michael said quietly, trying to bring back some lightness. Ryan let out a small, tired laugh that sounded almost painful. "Yeah, I do." As they sat there, the noise of the diner faded into the background. Michael watched his old friend eat slowly, like someone who hadn't had a real meal in days. His heart ached, seeing how much Ryan had changed, but underneath the dirt and the years of struggle, he could still see the boy who once had big dreams and even bigger belief in him. This one meal wasn't just about food. It was about holding on to the last thread of their friendship before it disappeared again. Ryan wiped his mouth with a napkin and looked down. "I don't know why you're doing this," he muttered. "But thank you." Michael simply nodded, already thinking about what he would say next to convince Ryan not to walk back into the night. As they finished the last of their meal, Ryan reached into his tattered coat pocket with shaking hands. He pulled out a faded piece of notebook paper, carefully folded many times over the years. The edges were worn and yellowed, but the childish handwriting was still clear enough to read. Michael watched quietly as Ryan smoothed the paper on the table between them. Michael's throat tightened the moment he saw it. "You kept it all this time," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Ryan looked down at the paper, his eyes distant. "Some promises refuse to die, even when the people who made them do," he said softly. "I've carried this with me everywhere. Through the bad days, the really bad days. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to remember who I used to be." Tears welled up in both men's eyes as they read the words aloud together. The simple oath they had written as 12-year-old boys now felt heavier than ever. "We, Michael Jordan and Ryan Harris, promise to become NBA superstars together. Best friends forever. Nothing can stop us." Their voices cracked on the last line. Michael reached across the table and placed his hand over Ryan's. "We swore we'd conquer the NBA together," he said. "Let me help you stand again. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Ryan pulled his hand back gently, wiping his eyes with the back of his sleeve. "It's too late for me, Michael. Look at me. I'm not that kid anymore. I've made too many mistakes. I don't deserve your help." His voice broke, and for the first time that evening, he couldn't hide the deep pain he was carrying. Michael leaned forward, refusing to back down. "I don't care what you think you deserve. That boy who taught me my first moves, who stayed after practice to help me get better, he's still in there. I see him right now. One night in a clean bed won't fix everything, but it's a start. Let me get you a room at the hotel down the street. No pressure, just one night out of the cold." Ryan sat quietly for a long time, staring at the old promise on the table. The diner around them felt far away. Finally, he folded the paper with great care and slipped it back into his pocket. He gave the smallest nod. "Just one night," he whispered. "Then I go back to my life, and you go back to yours. Michael paid the bill and helped Ryan up from the booth. As they stepped out into the cool evening air, Michael felt a quiet determination settle in his chest. He wasn't going to lose his friend again. Not tonight. Not ever. The two men walked slowly toward the car, the weight of their shared past and uncertain future hanging between them. They arrived at the hotel in silence. Michael got Ryan a room on the first floor and handed him the key card. For a moment, Ryan stood in the doorway looking lost, like he didn't know what to do with simple kindness. Michael told him he would check on him in a bit and left him alone to settle in. About an hour later, Michael returned to the room and found Ryan fully dressed, standing near the door with his few belongings gathered. He looked ready to disappear into the night again. The bed was untouched. Michael stepped inside and closed the door gently behind him. "I know you're scared," he said quietly, "but I'm not leaving you alone with your demons tonight." Ryan looked away, his shoulders tense. "You don't understand what I've done, Michael. I don't deserve clean sheets or kindness. I shouldn't even be here." His voice was low and full of shame. Michael sat on the edge of the bed, keeping some distance so Ryan wouldn't feel trapped. 30 years ago, you believed in me when the world didn't. You stayed late after practice, even when you were tired, just to help me get better. Tonight, I believe in you. That's what friends do." Ryan leaned against the wall, his hands trembling slightly. "It's not that simple. I've hurt people. I've made choices I can't take back. Every time someone shows me kindness, it just reminds me how far I've fallen." He paused, swallowing hard. "I was going to leave while you were gone, slip out the back and disappear. It's easier that way." Michael felt a sharp pain in his chest, hearing those words. He stood up slowly and walked closer, but not too close. "I'm not here to fix everything in one night. I just don't want you sleeping on the street when there's a safe bed right here. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, but please, stay. For me." The room fell quiet. Ryan stared at the floor for a long time, fighting with himself. His eyes were red and tired. Finally, he let out a shaky breath and dropped his small bag on the chair. "One night," he said again, his voice barely audible. "That's all I can promise." Michael nodded, relief washing over him. He could see how hard this was for Ryan. Before leaving the room, he turned back one last time. "I'll be right down the hall if you need anything. Try to get some rest. Tomorrow is a new day." As Michael stepped into the hallway and closed the door, he leaned against the wall for a moment. His heart felt heavy. He knew Ryan was still thinking about running, but at least for tonight, his old friend was safe. That small victory meant more than Ryan could ever know. The next morning, Michael returned to the hotel with coffee and breakfast, but the room was empty. Ryan had slipped out early. A quiet panic settled in Michael's chest. He spent the next few hours driving around the old neighborhood, asking people if they had seen his friend. Finally, someone mentioned the area under the Marshall Street Bridge. Michael parked his car a short distance away and walked toward the bridge on foot. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. Ryan was sitting on an old milk crate, surrounded by a small group of homeless teenagers with worn notebooks and school books. Despite looking exhausted and worn down, Ryan's voice was steady and patient as he explained a simple math problem, pointing at the page with a broken pencil. One of the boys, no older than 14, suddenly hugged Ryan tightly. "You're the only one who never gave up on us, Professor," the boy said, his voice full of real affection. "Everybody else left, but you keep coming back." Michael stayed hidden in the shadows, watching quietly. His heart broke and swelled at the same time. Here was his childhood friend, living on the streets with almost nothing, yet still finding ways to lift these kids up. Ryan didn't have money or a home, but he was still giving them his time, his attention, and his belief. It was the same Ryan who had once stayed late on the basketball court to help Michael. After the kids packed up their things and headed off, Michael stepped out from the shadows. Ryan looked up, surprised and immediately tense. "You followed me," Ryan said, his voice low. "You should have gone back to your life, Michael. I told you I'd be fine. Michael walked closer, his eyes still soft from what he had just witnessed. I saw what you were doing for those kids. Even now, when you've got nothing, you're still teaching, still caring. He paused, emotion thick in his throat. That's the Ryan I remember. That's the guy who never gave up on me. Ryan looked away, staring at the dirty ground beneath the bridge. It doesn't change what I am now. Teaching a few kids some math won't fix my life. But his voice lacked the usual sharpness. There was a quiet sadness in it instead. Michael stood there for a moment, taking in the makeshift classroom. Cardboard seats, a few old textbooks, and a small pile of snacks Ryan must have bought with whatever little money he had. Come with me, Michael said gently. Let me help you get back on your feet. Those kids need you healthy. I need my friend back. Ryan didn't answer right away. He slowly gathered his things, the internal struggle clear on his face. The sun was climbing higher, and the shadows under the bridge were starting to fade. For the first time since their reunion, Michael saw a tiny flicker of hope in Ryan's eyes. Fragile, but real. He just didn't know yet if Ryan would let that hope grow or run from it again. The next morning, Michael returned to the bridge with a small bag of breakfast and fresh clothes, hoping to convince Ryan to accept more help. But the moment he got there, his heart nearly stopped. Ryan was curled up on a piece of dirty cardboard, shivering violently even though the sun was shining. His face was flushed with fever, and his breathing sounded weak and ragged. "Ryan!" Michael called out, rushing over and dropping to his knees. He touched Ryan's forehead. It was burning hot. Ryan barely opened his eyes, his body trembling uncontrollably. "I'm fine," he whispered, but his voice was so faint it scared Michael. Without thinking twice, Michael lifted Ryan into his arms. His friend felt heartbreakingly light, like all the strength and life had been drained out of him. Michael carried him to the car the same way he once carried his biggest basketball dreams, with fierce protectiveness and a heavy ache in his chest. "I've got you, brother," Michael said, his voice cracking. "Just hold on. Please hold on for me." The drive to the hospital felt endless. Michael kept talking to Ryan the whole way, telling him old stories from their childhood to keep him awake. At the emergency room, doctors and nurses moved fast, wheeling Ryan away while Michael paced the hallway, his hands shaking. The fear of losing his friend again hit him harder than any game he had ever played. Hours later, when they finally let Michael back into the room, Ryan looked small and fragile against the white sheets. An IV dripped into his arm. The doctor pulled Michael aside and told him they had found a mass during the scans. When Michael returned to the bedside, Ryan looked up with tired, defeated eyes and whispered, "Just let me go, Michael. This is how it ends. It's okay." Those words broke something inside Michael. He sat down quickly and took Ryan's burning hand in both of his. "No," he said, his voice thick with tears he was trying to hold back. "You don't get to say that. Not after I just found you again. Those kids under the bridge need their teacher. I need my brother. I'm not letting you leave like this." Ryan's eyes filled with tears that slowly rolled down his sunken cheeks. "I'm so tired, Michael. I've been carrying this guilt for so long. Maybe this is my way out." His voice cracked, and for the first time, he didn't try to hide how much pain he was in. Michael squeezed his hand tighter, leaning closer. "I don't care how long you've been running. I'm here now. We're going to fight this together. Every step. You're not alone anymore. I promise." The machines beeped steadily in the quiet room as Michael stayed right there, refusing to let go. In that moment, the bond between them felt stronger than ever, even as fear and uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Later that night, the hospital room grew quiet. The lights were dimmed, and only the soft beeping of machines filled the air. Ryan lay in the bed, looking exhausted, but more awake after the medicine started working. Michael sat close by, refusing to leave, even when the nurses suggested he go home to rest. After a long silence, Ryan turned his head toward Michael. His eyes were filled with years of buried pain. In a shaky voice, he finally began to speak. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I've never told anyone." Michael leaned in, giving him his full attention. Ryan took a deep breath, tears already forming in his eyes. "When I was 19, I made the starting lineup for the college team. I was so happy. I went to a party to celebrate. I thought I was okay to drive." His voice broke. "I wasn't. I was behind the wheel when I crashed. I took my own parents' lives that night, Michael. How do you forgive something like that?" The words hung heavy in the room. Michael felt his chest tighten with shock and sadness. He reached out and gently held Ryan's hand. "Ryan, I had no idea," he whispered. Ryan's tears fell freely now. "I woke up in the hospital and they told me they were gone. Just like that. Because of me. I've been running from that guilt ever since. That's why I disappeared. That's why I ended up like this." Michael's own eyes grew wet. He squeezed Ryan's hand tighter, his voice full of emotion. "You were young and stupid. That doesn't make you evil. It was a terrible mistake, but it doesn't define who you are. Let me carry some of this weight with you. You don't have to hold it alone anymore." Ryan shook his head slowly, sobbing quietly. "I see their faces every night. I hear the sound of the crash. I don't deserve your friendship, Michael. I don't deserve anything good." Michael moved closer, his voice steady but thick with feeling. "I'm not going anywhere. You were there for me when I needed you most. Now it's my turn. We're going to face this together. The guilt, the sickness, everything. You're my brother, Ryan, and brothers don't quit on each other." Ryan cried harder, the years of pain finally breaking through the walls he had built. For the first time in a long time, he didn't pull away when Michael held his hand. In the quiet hospital room, something deep inside both men began to shift, a small, fragile bridge of healing starting to form between the past and whatever future might still be possible. The hospital room felt smaller as the night went on. Ryan, still weak from the fever, began opening up even more. His voice was tired and rough, but the words kept coming, like a dam that had finally broken after years of holding everything in. "I started taking pills to sleep at first," Ryan said quietly, staring at the ceiling. "Then more pills to get through the day. Before I knew it, basketball was gone. Everything was gone. I lost my scholarship, my friends, my future. I've been living on the streets for years now, sleeping under bridges, digging through trash for food, trying to stay invisible." He paused, his hand trembling on the blanket. "Every time I thought about reaching out to you, I couldn't. How do you tell your best friend you destroyed your own life?" Michael listened without interrupting, his heart aching with every word. When Ryan finally fell silent, Michael spoke gently, sharing his own memories to keep the connection alive. "Remember those rainy afternoons when we practiced on the court even though we were soaked?" he said with a small smile. "You kept pushing me, telling me my form was off, making me do the same move over and over until I got it right. You never gave up on me, even when I wanted to quit." Ryan turned his head slightly, a faint, sad smile crossing his lips for the first time. "Yeah, I remember. You hated the rain, but you still showed up every time." Michael nodded, his eyes misty. "Those days made me who I am. You made me who I am. The addiction, the years on the street, they don't erase that. They don't erase us." Ryan's eyes filled with fresh tears. "I've got scars everywhere, Michael. Not just the ones you can see." He pulled up his sleeve a little, showing the marks on his arm. "Some scars never fade. I wake up every day hating the person I became." Michael reached over and rested his hand on Ryan's shoulder. "Then let's start making new memories. You're still the guy who taught me how to believe in myself. That guy is still in there. I see him every time I look at you. We can't change the past, but we can fight for whatever time we have left." The two old friends sat together in the dim room, the weight of Ryan's painful story hanging between them. But for the first time, Ryan didn't feel completely alone with his scars. Michael's presence, steady, patient, and full of love, gave him a small sense of safety he hadn't felt in many years. As the night deepened, Ryan drifted off to sleep, still holding Michael's hand, while Michael stayed awake, watching over his friend and silently promising to stay by his side no matter how hard the road ahead would be. The morning light filtered through the hospital blinds as two doctors entered the room. Michael stood up immediately, his heart pounding. Ryan looked pale and exhausted against the white pillows, his hands gripping the blanket tightly. The air felt thick with tension. Everyone knew this moment could change everything. The head doctor glanced at her notes, then looked directly at Ryan. "We have the full results," she said gently. "The mass we found, it's benign. It's not cancer. With surgery and the right treatment, you should make a full recovery." Time seemed to freeze in the small hospital room. Ryan stared at the doctor, his face blank at first, as if he couldn't understand the words. Then the meaning hit him like a wave. His shoulders began to shake. Heavy, gut-wrenching sobs broke out of him, the kind that came from the deepest part of his soul. Tears streamed down his face as years of guilt, self-hatred, and exhaustion finally burst free. "I thought this was my punishment," Ryan cried, his voice raw and broken. "I thought God was finally letting me pay for everything I've done. I was ready to die, Michael. I had accepted it. I even wanted it. This was supposed to be my way out." Michael's heart shattered at the sound of his friend's pain. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and pulled Ryan into a tight embrace, holding him as the sobs grew stronger. Ryan clung to him desperately, his fingers digging into Michael's shirt like he was afraid he might disappear. "Your parents would want you to live," Michael whispered, his own voice thick with tears. He rubbed Ryan's back slowly, trying to comfort the broken man in his arms. "They would want their son to fight, to keep going. This isn't punishment, Ryan. This is grace. This is a real second chance. You still have time. Time to heal. Time to help those kids. Time to become the man you were always meant to be." Ryan cried harder, his whole body trembling. "I don't know how to live anymore," he choked out between sobs. "For so long, I've only known how to survive, how to punish myself. Every morning I woke up hating the person I saw in the mirror. What do I do with a second chance when I feel like I don't deserve one?" Michael held him even tighter, tears slipping down his own face. "You take it one breath at a time," he said softly. "And you let me help you. You let those kids under the bridge remind you why it's worth fighting. I'm not going anywhere. We've already lost too many years. I'm not losing you now." For several long minutes, the only sounds in the room were Ryan's heartbreaking sobs and Michael's quiet, steady words of comfort. Slowly, the crying began to ease, though the tears kept falling. When Ryan finally pulled back a little, his red, swollen eyes met Michael's. "I'm scared," Ryan admitted in a whisper. "Scared to hope, scared to believe this is real." Michael smiled through his tears and gently wiped Ryan's cheek. "Then be scared with me. We'll face it together. You're not alone anymore, brother. Not ever again." In that quiet hospital room, something profound shifted between them. What had felt like the end of Ryan's painful journey suddenly opened into a fragile new beginning, one filled with fear, hope, and the powerful bond of a friendship that refused to die. The afternoon light in the hospital room felt too harsh, too revealing for the heavy conversation that was coming. Ryan had grown unusually quiet after the morning's emotional breakthrough. He kept staring out the window, his fingers twisting the edge of the blanket nervously. Michael could feel the tension building and sat closer to the bed, waiting patiently without pushing. After several long minutes, Ryan finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's something else I need to tell you, Michael. Something I've carried for 15 years. It's the worst thing I've ever done. I don't expect you to forgive me. You deserve to know the truth." Michael's stomach twisted with dread. He nodded slowly, his hands clasped tightly together. "I'm listening." Ryan took a shaky breath. His hands trembled as he gripped the blanket harder. 15 years ago I was using again. It was a bad night. I don't even remember getting in the car. I woke up the next morning with blood on my hands and broken glass in my face from the windshield. I had hit someone. It was your cousin Tyler, Michael. I killed him in that hit and run while I was high. I destroyed your family. The words landed like a bomb in the quiet room. Michael staggered backward until he hit the wall, his face pale with shock and overwhelming pain. His mind flooded with memories: Tyler's warm laugh at family barbecues, the empty chair at holiday dinners, his aunt's endless tears at the funeral, and all the unanswered questions that had haunted them for years. The room fell deathly silent except for Ryan's broken, labored breathing. "You?" Michael whispered, his voice cracking. He pressed a hand against his chest, trying to hold himself together. "All this time, it was you?" "Tyler was like a brother to me. My aunt never got over losing him. We never knew what really happened." Ryan couldn't bring himself to look Michael in the eyes. Tears streamed down his hollow cheeks as he continued, his voice full of self-loathing. "I found out it was Tyler the next day from the news. I wanted to turn myself in, I swear I did, but I was a coward. Scared of prison, scared of facing you, scared of everything. I sold what little I had left and sent money anonymously to help with the funeral costs, but it was never enough. Nothing I did could bring him back. That's why I disappeared. That's why I've been punishing myself on the streets all these years, sleeping under bridges, helping those kids, trying to do some good to balance out the evil I caused." Michael sat on the edge of the bed and took Ryan's trembling hands in his own. "Because when I look at you, I see the kid who taught me to never quit," he said softly. "I see the boy who stayed after practice in the pouring rain just to help me get better. I see the man who still teaches those kids under the bridge, even when he has nothing left for himself. Yes, you made a horrible mistake that took Tyler from us, but you've also spent 15 years punishing yourself more than any prison ever could. I believe you've suffered enough." Ryan broke down into heavy sobs, his whole body shaking as he cried. "I don't deserve this," he choked out. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I wake up every single day seeing Tyler's face. I hear the sound of that crash in my nightmares." Michael pulled him into a tight hug, holding his friend as the tears continued to fall. "Then let's start making new memories," he whispered. "Tyler would want this. He believed people could change. I believe in you, too. We're going to get you through this surgery, get you healthy, and then we're going to build something good together. For those kids, for Tyler's memory, and for you." For a long time, the two men stayed like that, one crying out years of guilt, the other holding him steady through the storm. The torn pieces of the confession lay scattered on the bed, like symbols of a past finally being released. When Ryan finally pulled back, his eyes were red and swollen, but there was a new light in them, faint, scared, but undeniably there. For the first time in 15 years, he felt the smallest glimpse of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could learn to forgive himself too. The surgery went well. A few days later, Ryan lay in the recovery room, still groggy from the anesthesia, but breathing easier than he had in months. The doctors were optimistic. Michael had stayed at the hospital almost the entire time, only leaving briefly to handle a few urgent matters. When Ryan finally woke up fully, Michael was sitting beside his bed with a small envelope in his hands. He smiled warmly at his friend. "Welcome back," he said softly. Ryan blinked slowly, still adjusting to the reality that he was still here, alive. "I made it?" he asked, his voice weak. "You did," Michael replied. "The doctor said everything went perfectly." He opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of old photographs. "I brought something for you." One by one, Michael showed him the photos, faded images of two skinny boys on a basketball court, grinning with missing teeth, arms around each other's shoulders. There were pictures of them soaked in rain, practicing late into the evening, and one of them proudly holding up a small trophy from a local tournament. Ryan's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the memories. A soft, broken laugh escaped him. "We really thought we were going to take over the world, didn't we?" he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Two kids with big dreams and zero fear." Michael chuckled, his own eyes misty. "We were wild. Remember when you made me run suicides until I threw up? You told me champions don't quit when they're tired. They quit when they're done." They laughed together through the tears, the sound mixing joy and sadness in the quiet hospital room. For a few precious minutes, the weight of the past felt a little lighter as they revisited their childhood dreams and silly moments. Ryan gently traced his finger over one of the photos. "I missed this," he whispered. "I missed us. I spent so many years convinced I didn't deserve to remember the good times." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "Those good times are part of you too. They're not erased by the mistakes. You're still that same kid who believed in me, and now you get to decide who you want to be moving forward." Ryan looked at Michael with gratitude and fear mixed in his eyes. "I don't know how to live a normal life anymore. I've been surviving for so long, I don't know where to start." "Then we start small," Michael said firmly. "One day at a time. First, you focus on getting stronger. Then, we'll get you into a real apartment. After that, we'll figure out how you can keep teaching those kids. But this time, with a roof over your head and food in your stomach." Ryan nodded slowly, still holding the old photos. For the first time since the surgery, a real, genuine smile, small and tentative, appeared on his face. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. In that hospital room, surrounded by old memories and new hope, Ryan took his first real steps toward learning how to live again. A few days after the surgery, the hospital room door opened to a sight that neither Michael nor Ryan expected. A small group of kids from under the Marshall Street Bridge walked in shyly, some holding handmade cards and small gifts. Their faces lit up the moment they saw Ryan sitting up in bed. "Professor!" one of the younger boys shouted, rushing forward to give him a careful hug. Soon, the whole group surrounded the bed, filling the sterile hospital room with life, noise, and warmth. Ryan's eyes widened with surprise and emotion. "You all came," he said, his voice thick. "How did you know I was here?" One of the older girls smiled. "Michael told us. We've been worried about you. You disappeared for a while and we thought something bad happened." The kids took turns hugging Ryan gently, careful of his healing body. They shared stories that brought both laughter and tears. One girl told how Ryan had found her trying to buy drugs and talked her out of it by sharing his own painful past. Another boy explained how Ryan helped him with math every week so he could stay in school. The most touching moment came when the youngest boy, no older than 12, looked at Ryan with big, sincere eyes and said, "You showed us we're not defined by our worst mistakes. You told us that even when we mess up, we can still be good people. You made us believe that." Ryan broke down quietly, tears rolling down his cheeks as he listened. These children, the ones he had tried to help while barely surviving himself, were now standing here, telling him how much he mattered to them. Michael stood back and watched with a full heart. He saw the way Ryan's face softened, how the guilt that had weighed him down for so long seemed to lift just a little with every story and every hug. "You saved me, Professor," the oldest girl said softly. "I was heading down a really bad road. But you told me your story, and it made me want to change mine." Ryan wiped his tears with the back of his hand, his voice shaky. "I was trying to save myself too, you know. Helping you kids gave me a reason to keep waking up every morning." The room filled with more hugs and quiet laughter. The kids left small drawings and notes on his bedside table. For the first time in many years, Ryan looked truly seen, not as a homeless man or a person with a dark past, but as someone who had made a real difference in their lives. As the children said their goodbyes and promised to visit again soon, Ryan turned to Michael with wet eyes. "I thought I had nothing left to give," he whispered. "But they just showed me I still have something worth living for." Michael smiled warmly. You've always had more than you realized." In that moment, surrounded by the love of the children he had helped save, Ryan took another important step on his long journey toward healing. A few weeks after leaving the hospital, Michael drove Ryan to a quiet neighborhood not far from his youth center. He had prepared a simple but clean apartment on the second floor of a small building. It wasn't luxurious, just a modest living room, a bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom. But it was safe, warm, and filled with natural light. Michael opened the door and let Ryan step inside first. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. There were basic furniture pieces, clean sheets on the bed, and even a small desk by the window where Ryan could sit and prepare lessons for the kids. Ryan stood in the middle of the living room, looking around in silence. His hands trembled slightly at his sides. After a long moment, he shook his head slowly. "I can't accept this, Michael," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "After what I did to your family, to Tyler, how can you give me a home like this?" Michael closed the door gently and walked over to stand beside him. "This isn't about the past anymore," he said firmly but kindly. "It's about the future you can still build. You've punished yourself long enough. Those kids need you healthy and stable. You need a place where you can finally breathe and start healing." Ryan's eyes filled with tears as he looked around the modest space. "I've been sleeping on the streets for so many years. A real bed, a real kitchen. It feels wrong, like I'm taking something I don't deserve." Michael placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You deserve a chance to stand on your own 2 feet again. Tyler would want this for you. He believed in redemption, in giving people room to grow. I believe in that too. This apartment is just a starting point. From here, you can keep teaching, keep helping those kids, and slowly rebuild your life." Ryan walked over to the window and looked out at the quiet street. His shoulders shook as silent tears fell. "I don't know how to live in a normal place anymore," he admitted quietly. "I'm scared I'll mess this up too." "You won't be doing it alone," Michael replied, his voice steady and full of conviction. "I'll be right here to help you adjust. We'll take it one day at a time. You can start working at the youth center when you're ready. Those kids already see you as their professor. Now you get to do it with a real roof over your head." Ryan turned around, his eyes red but grateful. He walked over and pulled Michael into a tight hug, the first time he had initiated one since their reunion. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking, "for seeing something in me when I couldn't see it myself." They stood like that for a long moment, 2 old friends in a new beginning. For Ryan, this simple apartment represented more than just shelter. It was the first real step toward believing he could have a future worth living. The youth center was filled with nervous energy on the day of Ryan's first official class. About 20 teenagers sat in the room, some from the bridge, some from the neighborhood. They watched quietly as Ryan stood at the front, looking nervous but determined. He wore simple new clothes Michael had helped him pick out. For the first time in years, he didn't look like a man living on the streets. Ryan cleared his throat and began. "Today isn't just about math," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Today, I want to talk to you about life, the real stuff, the hard stuff." He took a deep breath and started sharing parts of his painful journey. He told them about his mistakes, the car crash that killed his parents, the addiction that destroyed his dreams, and the terrible night he took Michael's cousin Tyler's life. He didn't hold back the shame, the guilt, or the years he spent punishing himself on the streets. The room was completely silent. Some of the teens had tears in their eyes. One girl, who Ryan had helped under the bridge, was openly crying. "I'm not standing here as someone who has it all figured out," Ryan continued, his voice cracking. "I'm standing here as someone who made terrible choices and paid for them every single day. But I'm also standing here because someone refused to give up on me. Michael gave me a second chance when I thought I didn't deserve one. And those of you who knew me under the bridge, you gave me a reason to keep going." He paused, looking around the room at their young faces. "You are not defined by your worst mistakes. I told many of you that before, but now I'm living proof. If I can survive my past and still try to be better, then so can you." By the end of his talk, nearly every teen in the room had tears in their eyes. Several of them came up afterward to hug him. One boy, who'd been struggling with his own troubles, said quietly, "Thank you for being honest with us. It makes me feel like there's still hope for me too." Ryan stood there, emotionally drained, but deeply moved. Michael watched from the back of the room with pride swelling in his chest. He saw the transformation in his old friend, from a broken man hiding under a bridge to someone brave enough to stand in front of these kids and offer them the truth of his life as a lesson. After the last student left, Ryan sat down heavily in a chair, wiping his eyes. "I was so scared to do that," he admitted to Michael, "but it felt right, like I was finally using my pain for something good." Michael smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did more than teach math today. You gave them hope, and you're starting to heal yourself too." Ryan nodded slowly, a quiet sense of purpose settling over him. For the first time in many years, he felt like he was truly becoming a new man, not perfect, but honest, growing, and finally moving forward. One quiet afternoon, Michael took Ryan back to the old neighborhood basketball court where their friendship had begun many years ago. The rusty hoop was still there, the cracked asphalt still marked with years of memories. The sun was warm, and a gentle breeze blew across the empty court. Michael bounced the ball a few times, then passed it to Ryan. "Ready to see if you still remember that fake pass?" he asked with a smile. Ryan caught the ball, a mix of nervousness and excitement on his face. They started slowly at first, Ryan's movement still a little stiff from everything he had been through. But as they warmed up, something magical happened. The old rhythm came back. They practiced the fake pass again and again, the same move Ryan had taught Michael as kids. Ryan faked left, spun right, and sent the ball flying toward Michael, who caught it smoothly and finished with a soft layup. After one particularly good sequence, Ryan stopped, breathing hard but smiling. He looked at Michael with tears glistening in his eyes. "You made it legendary," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That move became your signature. I just want to be worthy of standing beside you again." Michael walked over and placed the ball under his arm. He looked at his old friend with deep affection. "You already are," he said simply. "You've always been worthy. The court doesn't care about our mistakes. It only cares that we show up. And you're here." They played for nearly an hour, laughing when they missed shots and cheering the good ones. At one point, they stopped to catch their breath under the hoop. Ryan looked around the court, memories flooding back. "I never thought I'd be back here," Ryan said quietly. "Not after everything. I used to dream about this court when I was sleeping on the streets. It was one of the few good memories I still allowed myself to have." Michael nodded, understanding completely. "This court is where we started, and now it's where we begin again. Not as the kids we used to be, but as the men we've become." Before they left, they stood at the center of the court and did the old handshake they created as children. Ryan's eyes were wet as he completed it. "Thank you for bringing me back here," he whispered. "I feel like I'm finally home." Michael smiled warmly. "We're just getting started, brother." As they walked off the court together, side by side, the old rusty hoop seemed to watch over them, a silent witness to a friendship that had survived darkness and was now finding its way back into the light. Late one evening, Michael received an urgent call. One of the boys from the bridge, a 16-year-old named Marcus, who Ryan had helped many times, had relapsed badly. He had run away from the youth center after a fight, heading back to the streets looking for drugs. Ryan didn't hesitate. Even though he was still recovering from surgery and the doctors had warned him to take it easy, he grabbed his jacket and went out into the night to find the boy. Michael tried to stop him, but Ryan was determined. "I know where he might go," he said. "I've been there before. I have to do this." Michael eventually joined him, and the two men searched the dark streets and alleys together. Ryan moved with urgency, his body still weak but driven by a deep sense of responsibility. They checked under bridges, behind abandoned buildings, and at known spots where kids sometimes gathered. After nearly 2 hours, they found Marcus sitting behind an old warehouse, shaking and crying. He was clearly under the influence and in a bad state. Ryan approached slowly and sat down beside him. "Hey, Marcus," he said gently. "It's me. You don't have to run anymore." The boy broke down. "I messed up again," he sobbed. "I thought I was stronger than this. I let you down, Professor." Ryan put an arm around the boy's shoulders, his own voice emotional. "You didn't let me down. We all fall sometimes. I fell for years. The important thing is getting back up. I'm not giving up on you, and you shouldn't give up on yourself either." Michael stood nearby, watching with pride and worry. He could see how much this moment meant to Ryan. It was more than just rescuing a kid. It was Ryan facing his own past and choosing to be better. When Marcus finally agreed to come back with them, he was too weak to walk on his own. Ryan, despite his recent surgery, helped support the boy. Michael quickly stepped in to help carry most of the weight. Together, they brought Marcus safely back to the youth center where counselors were waiting. Later that night, after Marcus was settled and receiving help, Ryan sat outside the center, looking exhausted but at peace. Michael sat beside him. "You risked your health tonight," Michael said quietly. "The doctors wouldn't have approved." Ryan nodded, staring into the darkness. "I had to. I know what it feels like to be that lost kid. If I can stop even one of them from going through what I did, it's worth it." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're becoming the man those kids need, and I'm proud to stand beside you." In the quiet night, Ryan felt another piece of his broken soul heal. This rescue wasn't just about saving Marcus, it was also about saving himself. The youth center was packed with people on the day of the official launch of the Jordan Harris Scholarship Program. Community leaders, families, former bridge kids, and supporters filled the main hall. On the wall behind the stage hung 2 large photos side by side, one of Tyler smiling brightly and the other of 2 young boys, Michael and Ryan, laughing on the old basketball court with a basketball between them. Ryan stood at the podium, looking healthy and composed in a simple button-up shirt. His hands rested calmly on the wooden stand, but his eyes showed the depth of emotion he was feeling. Michael sat in the front row, watching his friend with quiet pride. When it was Ryan's turn to speak, the room grew respectfully silent. He took a deep breath and began with a strong, clear voice. "I lost everything," Ryan said, looking out at the crowd. "My family, my dreams, my dignity. I made terrible mistakes that hurt people I loved and people I didn't even know. For years, I lived with guilt that almost destroyed me. But one man's forgiveness gave me a second life. Michael didn't just save me, he reminded me what it means to be human again." Many people in the audience wiped tears from their eyes. Ryan continued, his voice growing even stronger. "Today, we launched this scholarship program in honor of Tyler Jordan, a young man who believed in helping others and in memory of the friendship that refused to die. This program will help kids who are struggling, who feel lost, who think they've made too many mistakes to come back. Let's make sure no kid walks this road alone." The crowd erupted into heartfelt applause. Several of the teenagers Ryan had taught under the bridge stood up and cheered loudly. One by one, some of them came up to hug him after his speech. Michael joined Ryan on stage, placing a hand on his shoulder as they stood together in front of the photos. The 2 old friends looked at the images of their younger selves and at Tyler's smiling face. Ryan turned to Michael, tears in his eyes. "I never thought I'd stand here like this," he whispered. "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Michael smiled warmly. "We did this together. This is only the beginning." As the event continued with music, food, and celebration, Ryan moved through the crowd, talking with the kids and their families. For the first time in decades, he felt truly free, no longer defined only by his past, but by the good he was now creating. The dedication marked more than the launch of a program. It was a powerful symbol of redemption, forgiveness, and the incredible strength of friendship. Months later, the youth center buzzed with the familiar energy of young voices and laughter. Ryan stood at the front of the classroom, looking healthy, strong, and full of purpose. His face had filled out, his eyes were clear, and there was a quiet confidence in the way he taught. He moved naturally among the students, helping them with their work and sharing life lessons that came from hard-earned wisdom. Michael stood quietly in the doorway, watching his old friend with a warm smile on his face. He didn't want to interrupt. He simply took in the beautiful scene. The man who had once been broken and lost was now standing tall, giving back to the world in ways no one could have imagined. After the class ended and the students filed out, Ryan noticed Michael and walked over to him. The two men stepped outside into the fresh air and sat on a bench near the basketball court. Michael looked at his friend and said softly, "We didn't just keep our basketball promise. We kept the promise of brotherhood." Ryan smiled, his eyes glistening with emotion. "Thank you for teaching me how to stand up again, and how to forgive myself. I never thought I'd get here. There were so many nights I wanted to give up. But you stayed. You believed in me when I couldn't." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching a group of kids playing basketball nearby. The sound of the bouncing ball and their laughter brought back beautiful memories. In the quiet moments that followed, both men understood something profound. True victory wasn't measured in championships, trophies, or fame. It was measured in the lives they had helped rebuild, in the second chances they had fought for, and in the unbreakable bond of friendship that had survived darkness and emerged stronger on the other side. Ryan looked at Michael with deep gratitude. "I'm finally living again, not just surviving." Michael nodded, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "And I got my brother back. That's the greatest win of all." As the sun began to set over the neighborhood where their journey had started many years ago, the two friends sat side by side, no longer defined by their past mistakes, but by the hope, healing, and love they had chosen to carry forward. Their childhood promise, written on that old piece of paper, had finally been fulfilled in the most meaningful way possible. In the end, Michael Jordan and Ryan Harris's story reminds us that true strength isn't found in never falling, but in having the courage to rise again after hitting rock bottom. It teaches us that forgiveness isn't something we give because someone deserves it. It's something we offer because healing both hearts matters more than holding on to pain. No matter how dark our past may be, how many mistakes we've made, or how long we've been lost, there is always hope for redemption if we're willing to accept help and choose to change. Sometimes the greatest victories in life aren't measured by trophies or success, but by the lives we touch, the friendships we restore, and the quiet decision to love someone and ourselves enough to start over.